And here we go.
Sports!
I listen to you guys all the time.
It's awesome.
I'm in the mood for one of your classic anecdotes.
Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, that's enough.
Hey guys, there is someone I want you to meet.
Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun on Off the Hook Sports. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net.
Hey, look, we're all part of the same team here.
Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Welcome to the program with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Tennessee a 56-24 winner over UAB in a game that really didn't even seem that close. We'll get to takeaways, turning points, torchbearers, and the report card as we broadcast live right now, depending on when you're watching. Right after the game, we're with you each and every post game and every weekday at 10 a.m. We'll get to your thoughts on the message board, so go ahead and fill those up there. No hangover today, says General Ursus. You're absolutely right. And Caleb, I said this earlier in the week. I had no concern about a hangover by Tennessee. Please hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. I just felt like this team was maybe mature beyond its years. So the Vols, again, 56-24 winners. Let me get your impressions before I delve out my thoughts on the game as Tennessee moves to 3-1 on the season as Mississippi State is next on the docket. Caleb, what did you think of the Vols today? How are you, sir?
I am good, Dave. Well, I will tell you, I was sweating because I said my over of the week was this game, and it was moving. It was so sluggish at one point. I'm like, the 69.5 point over might not hit. But luckily it did in the end. And unfortunately, Tennessee did not cover. Josh Heupel usually covers in these games, but I feel like the offense kind of got a little sluggish going on. Tennessee, Joey Aguilar had another superb performance. I mean, that's what stands out. I don't think Joey Aguilar's thrown an interception this year that was actually his fault. That interception to Chris Brazzell, I thought that was a thrown ball, honestly, and Chris Brazzell was interfered with. And when everything kind of started with him, and it was a complete performance. We kind of expected this. UAB's defense is absolutely atrocious. Tennessee probably could have hung 70 if they kept their starters in the game, if they wanted to.
No question. 80.
Yeah, they could have hung 80. Yeah. And the only biggest thing I see, and I'll go ahead and I say this now, I don't think Jake Merklinger is going to win the starting job next year when Joey Aguilar is gone. I think I've kind of come to that conclusion. That's 2 times in a row now, where 2 weeks ago against ETSU, George McIntyre looked better than him. And then in this game, you saw Jake Merklinger coming off the bench. He did not play well when they went to the backups for mop-up duty. And so Joey Aguilar, to me, is the story still. Completed, what was it, his first 7 passes of the game?
Yes.
And after the first 14 last week, I mean, he gets, when you get that tempo going with Aguilar, he's really, really hard to stop.
No. This, according to East Tennessee News, and I want to address this because I'm flying in the face of this. So it's on offthehooksports.com right now. Defense sucked on so many levels today, couldn't even cover the spread. Jake needs to be third quarterback. George is much better. Okay, the latter, I'm not going to argue with you. I think Jake is probably the third string quarterback heading into next year. Well, I mean, you won't have Joey Aguilar, but anyway, you get my point. But I did not think the defense was horrible today. I don't think they were challenged, but I thought Tennessee showed a different way to win today, and that was with defense and a running game that was very solid. And after that interceptions to Brazzell, that I could debate that. I think that Joey Aguilar tried to force that ball in there, Caleb. But anyway, we could go back and forth on that. But after that interception, I felt like Tennessee went with some option plays, went with some different plays to try to mitigate any chance to keep this a real football game. And I felt like they did that. And this defense was good enough, and the offensive line and running backs were plenty good enough to keep this from ever being a football game. So this is one of those that if you lack maturity, if you lack the proper coaching approach, this could have been a football game. But as it turns out, it certainly was not.
No, it was not a football game at all. And it's every time there was a chance to make it a game, Tennessee made sure to snuff that out some way. And we forget this, guys, because people are questioning the defense. It was 42-7 at halftime. And there were a couple of times where you thought UAB might actually try to make this a game. One was right after the Joey Aguilar interception, and Tennessee's defense forces a 3-and-out. Boo Carter gets a nice punt return to set Tennessee up near midfield, and they score again. So when the defense was needed, you're right, they weren't really challenged. When the defense was needed to make a play, they made plays. And I think they played a little I think a lot of people are unhappy, Dave, because a lot of people probably put money on Tennessee covering. And the way Tennessee finished that game was probably very frustrating. A lot of people are pretty mad about the money they lost in that. So they want to take it out on the defense. But I don't think there was anything from this game that would lead you to be totally concerned about the defense. There are reasons to be concerned about the defense, and we'll talk about those. But I don't necessarily think the fact that they gave up 24 points and 370 yards through the air. I mean, a lot of those yards were in garbage time when the game was over. And I don't think that's the biggest deal. So,
well, I agree. And then you get into the fact that Tennessee was able to rely on its running game. And again, I know that we're not talking about world beaters in UAB. I'm aware of that. But Peyton Lewis, 11 carries for 81 yards. Deshaun Bishop, who was the feature back out of the chute for some reason, 9 carries, 59 yards. Star Thomas, who I still think is the best of the threesome. I just think that they are biding their time in running him more. 9 rushes for 51 yards. Altogether, 4 touchdowns by that crew. Listen, I know this is UAB, but I really believe that this offensive line and these trio of running backs can be something that you can lean on for the day when Joey Aguilar gets found out, or at least slowed to some extent. I think that you saw that by Tennessee today, and that's pretty valuable.
Yes, you did. And it's funny you bring that up with the running backs, because, I was ready to, believe it or not, write Peyton Lewis off, because I'm sure you saw that drop pass he had on a screen that would have gone to daylight early. And it just felt like he was making too many key mistakes. But after that drop pass, Peyton Lewis really settled in and finally looked like the running back we've been waiting for him to look like, honestly. And now that you have that 3-headed monster, I mean, Dave, as good as Dylan Sampson was last year, man, he was good, and I'm not taking anything away from him. In this day and age in football, with the way things are set up, you prefer the 3-headed monster, don't you?
Yes, for the most part. I'd take 3 good tailbacks over 1 elite tailback for the most part. And I think with Peyton Lewis, we're a little surprised that it's taken him that long to settle in, because most running backs, they settle in pretty quickly. And it's taken Peyton Lewis a little bit longer, but I think that's completely understandable. All right, let's get to takeaways. We hit on some of those right now. I think this showcase, my main takeaway is that it showcased Tennessee's ability to win with a running game, to win with defense, and they didn't have to throw for a cajillion yards as they seemingly had to against Georgia to win a football game. I think you're going to see that moving forward. So I know I'm projecting against a lesser opponent here, a very lesser opponent, but that's my takeaway, is that Tennessee showed that they could win in more than one way. Hit that like and subscribe button and fill us in on the message board. Your thoughts on takeaways as Tennessee beats UAB 56-24.
Yeah, I totally agree. It was a very balanced attack. Tennessee had 275 passing yards and 235 rushing yards in the game, 3 passing touchdowns, 4 rushing touchdowns. The difference in the game was on the ground. That is actually one of my takeaways too. It's Tennessee had 235 rushing yards. UAB had 23 rushing yards. And by the way, that was only 8 yards going into the fourth quarter. UAB had 8 yards on the ground going into the fourth quarter. Tennessee had 235. This game was won on the ground. And that really stands out for Tennessee, that, the fact that they blew them out. So I totally agree with you. It was the balanced attack and the ground game at the line of scrimmage that won this game.
Okay. Any other takeaways before we get to turning points?
Yeah, a few others. Fast starts continue. Dave, Tennessee scored a touchdown on 6 of its 7 possessions in the first half, and then there was the interception. But They scored on their first 2 drives, and then after the interception, then they scored on the next 4. And Joey Aguilar was 7 of 7 to start the game. This is good. This is kind of early Heupel Tennessee, where they're going to be sluggish in the middle of the game a lot of times, but they are going to start really fast, won't they?
Yes, I think this is a team that, and even though this game was won as much on the ground as through the air by Tennessee, it was still set up by the fact that UAB was afraid of Tennessee in their passing attack. I don't think there's any question about that.
Exactly. A couple of others. Defense was very opportunistic. This is where I was disagreeing with the defense. I mean, Boo Carter forces a fumble that's returned for a touchdown, and then Andre Turrentine gets an interception before that, and also they get that 4th down stop in the first half. So when they were needed, they were very, very opportunistic, made a couple of plays. A couple of negatives I just want to point out. They gave up too many 3rd and longs. And that is where the 375 yards happened. You know, the third down defense was it. You know, the old 3rd and Chavis phrase. It felt like it might have been back in this game a little bit. And that might have always been a little unfair to John Chavis, but it was a known thing. And then the final one is just too many Butterfingers in this game. I talk about the Brazel pass. I talk about the Peyton Lewis pass. And then we talk about the Boo Carter muffed punt. You know, little things like that you can't have in SEC play.
He looked apathetic on that play. That was troubling to me. And Matt Stinchcomb pointed that out, the Georgia offensive lineman who was the ESPN color guy. He just looked like he wasn't into it at that point in the game from a punt return standpoint, which I don't get.
He did, and I don't know what to make of it because everybody, if you read Vol Twitter, you know, given the stories with Boo Carter in the offseason, the world was like, just kick him off the team. I'm done with him. I'm tired of him, yada, yada, yada. And what does he do? He goes after that and has probably the best defensive sequence anybody individually has had in a game this year, honestly, where he got a strip sack, then he got a tackle for a loss, then he forced another fumble that was returned for a touchdown, all on one drive. And so he did look apathetic, but I think I don't want to take away from the stuff he did the rest of the game. Sometimes you get lost in thought playing football, and I know you shouldn't, but I feel like sometimes players do.
No, that's fair. Any other takeaways from the game?
No, those are my biggest ones. What were your thoughts on too? We talked about the opportunistic defense, but then the too many 3rd and longs. That is the one area where I'm going to have to, like I said, you're going to have to work on that a little bit in the pass defense in the back 7.
No, that's fair. And let's make that part of Turning Points. It's brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. 30 seconds, then Turning Points with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker off the Oaks. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. All right, I got one big turning point, and it's the Joey Aguilar pass to Chris Brazel that went off of his shoulder pad and was intercepted. I felt like that changed Tennessee's coaching philosophy to some extent, not drastically, but they were determined not to make it a football game at that point. So they relied on their running game, they relied on their defense, and Tennessee was plenty good enough to be able to do that.
Yes, that's actually one of my key turning points, funny enough, because I think that one of the underrated ones was right after that interception, that defensive stand that they had, which one of those was an ineligible receiver downfield penalty that helped them, but they forced 2 incomplete passes, forced a 3 and out, and Boo Carter got that 34-yard punt return right after that. I agree with you. Everybody stiffened up at that point after that interception because they so desperately did not want to make it a game. And what really stood out to me, again, this is why I was, when the defense needed to come through and put it away, they came through and put it away. And that was a really big point that the defense stood their ground. So you and I looked at it a little differently, but I think we're on the same page that's definitely that sequence is definitely a turning point in the game.
What other turning points were out there for you?
A few others. The 12-yard pass to Braylon Staley on the first drive. This is a very underrated play of the game. You remember Tennessee drives down to the red zone. They get a holding penalty that brings up a 1st and 18, right?
Right.
The last thing you want against a team like UAB is to have to kick a field goal on your opening drive. 1st and 18, you might actually think you have to settle for a field goal, but they get a 12-yard pass to Braylon Staley, which sets up the touchdown a couple plays later, I believe, to Chris Brazel. That was huge. That was very underrated in that moment. The next one, the play of the game to me, the 39-yard touchdown pass to Mike Matthews. That was just a beautiful deep ball, wasn't it? That he threw.
No question about it. You're going to see more of those. Any other turning points on the day after Tennessee beats UAB 56-24?
Yes, there actually was. And this is another underrated part. But there was another one where Tennessee, they went up 28-0. UAB scored to make it 28-7. Tennessee got the ball. Again, you want to keep this way well in hand so you can get your backups in the fourth quarter. But Tennessee was playing from way behind at one point. It was 1st and 25. And you're thinking, oh, they're going to have to punt to UAB. UAB's offense has gotten it going, could somewhat make it interesting. But right after that, they, on a 3rd and 12, UAB stupidly commits a defensive pass interference penalty, which nets Tennessee a 1st down. And after that, Tennessee's able to go down the field. Peyton Lewis gets that 32-yard touchdown run to make it a 35-7 game. And then right after that, the turning points are Tennessee gets a stop on 4th and 3. And right after that, Josh Heupel finally this year goes for it on 4th down, and they get a touchdown out of it. So that really stood out to me.
Yep, absolutely. Torchbearers up next, the standouts for the Vols. As with Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
A beacon of hope in a world of high prices. Look to the skies, Knoxville. Super savings is here. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 Volume 4 dealer.
Right now, get 0% APR, 0 down, and 0 payments for 90 days on select models, plus 2 years complimentary maintenance.
Come see the super dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Hit like and subscribe.
We'll do it, Coop. All right, let's get to Torchbearers. Who were the standouts? It's funny, we talk about Tennessee's running game and their defense, but we could pick Joey Aguilar again if we wanted to. I mean, it's not as if the passing game was horrible by any stretch of the imagination.
No, Joey Aguilar is one of my torchbearers. I think he was superb in this game. Again, he misses every now and then, and he takes a couple of chances, but I still just that 218 yards was a very efficiently gained 218 yards. I think you and I would both agree on that. So he's absolutely a torchbearer. My controversial one is, and here's the one that I think you might wish you had Tracy Morgan back, because that's what people might be saying to me when I say this, but Boo Carter is one of my torchbearers. And
wow. See, that surprises me based off the body language just on that one play.
That one play, I was ready to write an article lambasting him, and I still might, by the way, later tomorrow. But I don't think we can overrate. You get that one play. He worked his butt off right after that on that next drive, on the defensive drive. Again, that's what I think stands out to me is for Boo Carter to make that mistake. He was lackadaisical. He should not have done that, and he knows he shouldn't have done it. And he went out of his way to make up for it the very next drive. And I think that doing that really stands out, and forcing a fumble that's returned for a touchdown and having a 34-yard punt return that sets up another touchdown. I can't really, as bad as that dropped fumble was, and it was, the way he bounced back with other positives made me put him on my torchbearers list today. Okay,
I can go with that. Any other torchbearers out there?
Andre Turrentine, because of his interception. I still think the pass defense could have been better, but I'll give Turrentine, and I still don't believe in Turrentine long term, but he had an interception. Got to give him credit for that.
Yeah, definitely. I thought that was a strong play. What about Caleb Beasley on the touchdown, or Boo Carter as a torchbearer? I know you said partly because he caused that fumble, but what did you make of that play?
Yeah, that was to me, that was all Boo Carter. I gave him all the credit in the world for making that play. Heads up play by Caleb Beasley to scoop and score. Don't get me wrong, but that was the Boo Carter drive right there. Honestly, the whole sequence, and so that's why I gave it to him. But Caleb Beasley could definitely be an honorable mention for returning it. But I had to go more offense because we already mentioned Joey Aguilar. Now this may be a little controversial, Dave. Some people would say Peyton Lewis for the torchbearer of the running backs, and the running backs collectively could be one. But I'm going to make Star Thomas my torchbearer, because he had 2 touchdowns, and one of them was a reception. And I think that's, Peyton Lewis dropping that, what would have been a touchdown reception. If Peyton Lewis catches that, he's my torchbearer. But that drop, I give Star Thomas the credit as the face of the running backs today.
All right. We get to the report card, and that's brought to you. Oh, yes. One more.
One last underrated torchbearer.
Let me tease it forward. Brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Don't forget about those new checkerboard diamond rings. They are gorgeous. You can get them in one segment or all 3. Order now for Christmas. Rick Terry Jewelry Design. Again, Rick Terry Jewelry Design. All right, Caleb. One last torchbearer before we get to a report card.
Yes, and the underrated one of the day, Lance Hurd. You don't see it a lot with offensive linemen, but Lance Hurd is having a quiet All-American caliber season at left tackle.
He is. He is. It is funny you mention that because I thought that during the game.
Yeah. Tennessee, you notice they ran to their left a lot in this game, funny enough, and gained 235 yards. They didn't surrender a sack all game. As far as I'm aware, as long as Joey Aguilar was in there. They may have done one with Jake Merklinger, but yeah, they surrendered one with Jake Merklinger. But when the starters were in, they didn't surrender a sack. I think when you take that into account, Lance Hurd is a superstar. And I could say that about the whole offensive line, but Lance Hurd was just incredible.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing Glenn Ellerby start to develop an offensive line in his own molding. I think it's incredibly difficult just to go out and convince offensive linemen that are highly touted to come to your school when you don't have that history of success. He now has that, and I think it's tougher to get 5 offensive linemen than sometimes even 1 quarterback, Caleb, in recruiting. But Tennessee now has that, and you're seeing this offensive line being molded in Ellerby's fashion and in Heupel's fashion and in this coaching staff's fashion as well. So I think that's huge. Let's get to the report card. Defensive line. Let's start with the guys up front, the big uglies. How did they do, Caleb?
Defensive line gets an A+. That was the best unit of the day. I mean, again, they held UAB to 8 rushing yards through 3 quarters. Need I say more about the defensive line on that?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah. Linebackers, I would have to give an A. Your thoughts?
Really? I'm going C+ because I thought their third down pass defense was still bad. And the coverage issues are still there with stopping the run. You're right. Maybe I could go B- with linebackers.
Okay. Well, you write it, so you do what you want.
I hash it out with you, so
I mean, I thought the Beasley touchdown was significant. I guess I still kind of consider Boo Carter a little bit of a linebacker in the 4-3 look. Maybe I shouldn't, but I thought they were better than a C in that range.
All right, you know what? The Beasley touchdown, you got me B-. I'll up it to a B-. I'll keep it above average. How about that?
Okay, I can go with that. All right, defensive backs. I know you've been highly critical of them. Your thoughts on Tennessee's defensive backs in the report card?
Yeah, I give them a B-. Now, the Turrentine interception, I thought the starters played fine, but when I grade people, I grade them throughout the whole game. And when they put the backups in mop-up duty, they gave up a lot of yards late. So because of that, it's B-. But it wasn't like they gave up anything critical. But it's
I would at least grade them on a curve, though, wouldn't you? I mean, you're talking about late in the 4th quarter.
I would also grade them on a curve the other way because they're playing UAB.
Okay, that's fair. All right, let's get to the offensive side of the report card. Brought to you by Sports Treasures in North Knoxville. Over 5 million Sports Treasures. 30 seconds with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, off the Hook Sport.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
All right, Caleb. So, and thank you, Lindsay, for saying great point, Dave. I'm glad to do that. That's what I'm here for. Smash the like button, says General Ursus. Yes, do that. Go ahead and like the Vols after they won 56-24 over UAB in a game that wasn't close, but in the game that they showcased some different skill sets, which I think will be significant, maybe as early as this weekend against Mississippi State. All right, so offensive line. I know you're very high on Lance Hurd. Does that mean you're an A across the board, Caleb?
I'm an A+.
Yeah,
I'm an A+ on the offensive line. I mean, they were superb. I can't say, yeah, I was high on them across the board. Lance Hurd was almost a default. Like, I had to pick somebody, but he has been the best lineman, so that's why I named Lance Hurd as the torchbearer. But, like, I'm an A+ on them across the board. They were perfect today.
Yeah, I thought there was one bust where somebody came free to Joey Aguilar, and he was forced to run outside.
Where he rolled out.
Yeah, but
yeah.
I mean, that's one bust in the entire game. That's perfectly fine. So Lindsay has their grades up there, so we'll take a look at those. But let's turn to Tennessee's quarterback position, because I want to hold on the running backs for a second. Quarterback, I thought, was an A. They didn't need it to be an A, but it was today. And I will put more on Joey Aguilar's interception than you will, perhaps, Caleb, as I thought he did try to force that in there to Chris Brazel, and it ended up going off Brazel's shoulder pad and was intercepted. But again, that's nitpicking. And then at the end of the day, Josh Heupel could say on Monday it's not his fault, and I would believe it.
I'll go A- for quarterback because of two things. Again, I grade across the board. I'll give you maybe Joey Aguilar shouldn't have forced that interception. He also didn't really miss, but I think he could have thrown a couple of deep shots to Mike Matthews that could have been thrown a little bit more catchable in the moment. And the biggest one, though, is highly underrated. Jake Merklinger played so poorly coming off the bench. I have to knock that play a little bit for that. He was not good in mop-up duty.
Yeah, and did you notice this, too? The Matt Stinchcomb saying, boy, they are really high on this guy before he threw a pass. That, to me, is coming straight from Tennessee's coaching staff in hopes that Merklinger doesn't transfer following.
I think you're right. I think you're totally right.
That's plain politics. That's clearly what that was. No question about it. Now, Orange Blood saying that's a Nate talking about Joey Aguilar's interception. Said not his fault. Not at fault interception. I don't know. We got a new stat we're going to bring up. All right, so Tennessee's running backs, they're an A. I mean, again, I mentioned the numbers across the board. 11 carries, 81 yards for Peyton Lewis, 9 carries for 59 yards for Deshaun Bishop, 9 carries for 51 yards for Star Thomas. And I'll credit UAB to some extent. I thought they defended the run fairly well. So to me, it was a situation in which Tennessee maximized runs. I'm using the eyeball test here, but I thought they maximized runs. I didn't see yards that were left on the field. And I think Tennessee's three-headed monster at running back can be incredibly good this year, way better than I thought. I started this year thinking Lewis would be the answer. Bishop would be a guy that's just around, and that Star Thomas was an unknown. Now I feel like I know these guys pretty well, and they're averaging 7.4 yards per carry, 6.6 and 5.7 against UAB, and I think they'll be very good.
You and I are on the same page. They're an A to me too. If Peyton Lewis doesn't drop that touchdown pass, the clear as day screen where he has nothing but green in front of him, it's an A+. But even with that drop, collectively they rushed together for those three alone had 191 yards on the ground. And then you add Star Thomas's 17-yard touchdown reception. They combined for those three combined for 5 touchdowns and 208 yards total, all-purpose yards from scrimmage. Add Dwayne Morris, by the way, who looked pretty good in mop-up duty with 7 carries for 38 yards. and he had a long touchdown run called back by an unnecessary holding, or a long run that would have put almost a touchdown. But look, give him yeah, I'm with you. Running backs get it, clear A.
All right, special teams.
We got to do receivers and tight ends first.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot receivers and tight ends.
Dave hates the receivers. He wants to go back. He wants to go back to 1980s football, ground and pound. Receivers get an A. I mean, if we can debate that Chris Brazzell drop that should have been a PI call that you think is more on Joey Aguilar forcing it. That either way, I think that's a nitpicky for me to keep it from being an A+. And then tight ends, I give him an A+. I thought Miles Kitzelman had 2 great catches. I thought they were great in pass pro all night too, or all day.
And then the kicking game. Sorry.
Yes, kicking game. Return game is a C+. Dwayne Morris and Boo Carter both had good returns, but once you fumble a punt, that's all. The most important thing in returns in the return game is to not fumble a return, right? More than to just have a good one.
Yes. No, I agree. You fumble a return, that automatically, at best, you're going to do a C in my book. All right, so let's get to coaching.
Well, place kicking is an A+. I wanted to add that, and punting is an A. But yeah, return game is C. Coaching, I think offensive play calling, A+. I didn't have any problem with offensive play calling. Did you?
No, I would go coaching was an A across the board, just because they were willing to get away from their usual bag of tricks, which is Joey Aguilar throwing left, right, deep, short, everywhere. And they were willing to rely on their defense and running game to not ground it out. It sounds weird to even say that, but you know what I'm driving at.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. And that's why I would give it an A across the board, and particularly A+ for offensive coordinator. And on my defensive play call, and I'm going to go A-. I think it was fine until the end when they kind of let him get way too many garbage yards. Honestly, that's not Josh Heupel doesn't usually like to do that. So Tim Binks doing that is why it's an A-, but they were fine when they needed to be.
All right. And then overall 56-24, probably shouldn't have been that close. I give Tennessee an A.
I'm mad. They cost me money. I'm going B+. I had them covering.
Oh my gosh. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We broadcast live every weekday at 10 a.m. from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, tedrussellford.net, tedrusselllincoln.net. They will absolutely make sure you get the vehicle you want because they're East Tennessee's largest volume dealer. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports. Subscribe if you haven't to this point, and go ahead and hit that like button on